welcome to Served Up. This podcast is where hospitality meets leadership and where we take an honest look at the business of beverage. I'm Bridget Albert. I've spent my career building cocktail programs, mentoring rising talent, judging competitions, and advocating for women in our industry. I'm joined by my co-host, Eric Heemer, one of only 5 people in the world to hold both the Master Sommelier and Master of Wine titles. His depth of knowledge and global perspective brings tremendous insight to every conversation. This is Served Up.
Welcome to Served Up. Today, Bridget and I had a fascinating talk with Maggie and Rodolphe Frerejean-Taittinger about French Bloom, their award-winning line of premium alcohol-free French sparkling wine. We touched upon Maggie's career as director of the Michelin Guide and her friendship with top model Constance Jablonski, and how the idea for French Bloom came to fruition with the technical expertise of Maggie's husband Rodolphe, who's the CEO of champagne producer Frerejean Frere. We talk about the many quality aspects of the wines, what makes the Limoux region of France perfect for the production of high-quality Chardonnay and Pinot Noir grapes for the wine, and what makes French Bloom unique in the fast-growing category of de-alcoholized wines. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation. Thank you.
Maggie and Rodolphe, welcome to Served Up. Eric and I are so tickled to have you both on the show today. We'd love to start off by if you could both tell us about yourselves, how you met, your careers, and, how this all began with French Bloom.
Of course. Well, thank you so much. We're absolutely pleased to be here with you today. I am Maggie Frerejean-Taittinger. I am an American, currently living in Paris. I'm originally from Chicago. I spent many years in New York, where I fell in love with a Frenchman who kidnapped me and convinced me to move to Paris, and that was about a decade ago. My career is in gastronomy. I had the pleasure of working for the Michelin Guide for quite a few years, managing the international development of the guide. And it was during this time, of course, where there was this major aha moment, and we co-founded French Bloom. But I think we'll get to that.
Hi, so I'm Rodolphe Frerejean-Taittinger. So I'm the Frenchman who kidnapped Maggie. And I'm originally from Champagne and Cognac. And I joined this incredible adventure because of my wife.
It's
Wonderful.
a very romantic story. Will there be a romantic comedy written about your story anytime soon? Because I'll watch it.
Absolutely. And there will be many, many bubbles, both with alcohol and without. I can guarantee that.
Love it. I love
But that's
it.
the thing, is that I think you're going to hear us say that quite a bit today. But, first and foremost, we are sparkling wine lovers. We are champagne lovers. And, we're by no means anti-alcohol or ever here to give lessons. We're just about choice. And sometimes we mix between alcoholic and non-alcoholic, bubbly and sparkling wine in the same occasion.
I hear they call that zebra striping, or younger folks call that zebra striping. I've never called it
Absolutely.
zebra striping until now.
Very good. So you did your homework. You can call it zebra striping. We refer to it as flexi drinking.
Oh, I
And
like
what is important is that French Bloom's core customers, we estimate about 80% actually do drink alcohol, do drink champagne or wine, but they're zebra striping or flexi drinking, depending on the mood.
Very good. Well, it's good to have an option there. So thank you for that. So tell us about the background here. I know that you and your friend Constance Jablonski founded French Bloom. Please tell us about the concept. How did this come to
Sure.
pass? When did the idea become reality?
Sure. So the idea was very much born in 2019. As I mentioned, I was leading the international development of the Michelin Guide. I was traveling the world. I was discovering new and exciting cuisines. I had a lot of exposure to restaurant scenes and chefs. But it was also a very interesting moment to work at Michelin because they had just acquired Robert Parker Wine Advocate. And I think there was this dialogue between food and wine pairing, it made it even more central to what they were doing. So I also found myself in 2019, and I think you're going to understand where I'm going, pregnant with twins. And really, for the very first time in my life, I found myself at loss at what to pair with these beautiful starred experiences. And I also felt what it could be like to be a little bit on the sidelines or feel excluded from social events, whether it be corporate events, but also personal events. I felt like I wasn't really a part of my friend's wedding, or I felt a little bit awkward on the sidelines, you could say, at a happy hour during holiday, during vacation. So I shared this experience with the third member of this founding team who's not on this chat today, Constance, you mentioned. Constance Schabowski is in the fashion industry. She's a very dear friend of both Rodolphe and mine for many years. And Constance was living in New York at the time as a model. And I think in the fashion industry, like a lot of sectors, including our own, networking is extremely important. But networking is often in the later hours of the evening with something alcoholic in your hand. And Constance, for all of her busy life, traveling the world, beating jet lag, having early start times, but still wanting to socialize or network in the evening, she felt like she couldn't or didn't want to drink wine or champagne every time she went out. So we remember really thinking, how is it possible that we've elevated in my side gastronomy to such an extraordinary level? Yet if someone chooses not to drink alcohol, they're almost excluded from that important ritual. And for Constance, the same thing. Celebration isn't just about what's in the glass. It's about really feeling like you're a part of the moment. So we started really drafting, I guess you would call it, the blueprint of the project. For me, first and foremost, it was, let's attempt to create something that's at that same level of complexity, balance, that gives you a similar emotion, but also experience to fine wine and champagne. So it was really, of course, what's in the bottle. Secondly, it was also without compromising on the naturality. Remember, I'm pregnant at the time, so I was convinced that if we can manage to keep it organic, without sugar added, no preservatives, no added sulfites, I wanted a pregnant woman to be able to enjoy it. And then the third part of the project of this blueprint was, what if we're extremely intentional when it comes to brand building? Can we attempt to create something that approaches the experience and the desirability of traditional French sparkling wine? Can we try and build a brand that people are proud to bring to a dinner party or have on your table? So those were the three things we had in mind. Unfortunately, for Constance nor I, we didn't have any know-how at the time. We didn't know how. And I think you probably know where I'm going with that. That's where I sat down with my husband, Rodolphe, who, fortunately for us, is a champagne maker. He joined the project, and we launched the R&D.
So that sounds like serendipity to me. It was meant to be. And how did you come up with the name French Bloom? I love it. It's very catchy and very, very descriptive as well. Was there an inspiration for the name?
Of course. So French, it goes without saying, we're made in France. Our winery, our vineyards are in Limoux in the south of France, which we'll have an opportunity to share more with you about. Blooming for us is opening up, blooming, becoming the best version of yourself. Don't forget that French Bloom was being developed in the early years during COVID, during confinements, when we realized that being social, coming together, spending a few too many hours around the table or at closing the terrace is extremely important for your wellness. And we believe we're the best versions of ourselves when we're socializing. So French Bloom, also, if I'm very honest with you, we wanted a name that was easy to say in the export market
Mm.
because we never thought that French Bloom would be received the way it was in France. But that was one of the surprises in the early years, that actually French Bloom, our second largest market is France.
Yeah, that is an added bonus. Okay, well, thank you. And let's jump over and talk to Rodolphe a little bit. And you've already sort of prefaced this, Maggie. Thank you. But Rodolphe, given your background in Champagne and your expertise in the subject, of course, you're the ideal partner for this enterprise. But how did you initially feel about making a no-alcohol sparkling wine?
So I was completely against it because I come from champagne wine. My family makes champagne since quite a long time now. I come from this beautiful area, and wine and spirits, especially wine, are quite a very conservative religions, with quite against any form of like innovation. So, so I come from these parts, this area, especially in France or in Italy, where we are very conservative when it's about wine. I mean, in Italy, like wine is like the blood of the Christ. I don't know if you should say that, but it's a pretty big deal. And so coming from that, when Maggie arrived with these crazy ideas in 2019, I told her, no, thanks. It's not my things. And, we already have so much to do with the wine, with alcohol. And so, but, happy wife, happy life. So from that, I start to get interested, because my wife was pregnant. She was bit rejected from the party, and she started to share that, yeah, but there is those alcohol-free beers. It's starting to do well. As Maggie say, as a pregnant woman, she was drinking alcohol-free beers, but she's not a beer drinker, and she's a champagne drinker. She's a wine drinker. So I had to start studying about that with a small team of people where we try to put people with different mindsets, which are a little bit more open mind to innovations, to creativity. And so from that, we start to drink every alcohol-free options, especially alcohol-free wine, quite disappointed. We were really afraid with soy. It was very challenging because when you remove the alcohol of a wine, you remove also the backbones of the wine. So, but we we put a lot of faith and a lot of hard work to try to understand A, how these things works, and B, how we could disrupt it and how we could make something good. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the customer experience. And if the customer experience is good, that's the most important aspect. So we first start to de-alcoholize wine from France. We've been de-alcoholized wine from all the area of France. We've been de-alcoholized great wine. Actually, we did some really bad blasphemy. We de-alcoholized some Chassagne Rocher. We de-alcoholized some top Bordeaux. We de-alcoholized some top Champagne. But I think that was really one of the learning. The key learning was that you can get if you de-alcoholize a Romanée Conti, you will not make a good alcohol-free Romanée Conti. And so you have to think, you have to build a base wine which is able to support the de-alcoholizations. And that's, I believe, the most important know-how we've been developing and crafting the last 6 years, which was to create base wine who have enough body, enough structures to be able to support the de-alcoholizations and to find back after the de-alcoholization some structures and some length, some quality. And on top of that, making sure that it's pregnant friendly. So it has to be organic, it has to be without sulfite, it has to be natural, because my wife at this time especially was really want to have something very natural. So no preservative, no added sugar. On top of that, it has also to be good, low in calorie, low or no sugar at all. So, that was a hard quest.
You've really set the bar very high, and I'm very
Yes.
happy for you that you managed to get over the bar because it has all those things and it still tastes good and tastes like a fresh, crisp, sparkling wine should. So
Thank you so much.
congratulations on overcoming all of those challenges.
Yes, it's absolutely beautiful. And as I'm sitting here thinking of the people in my life that I know that are on the NA, the non-alc, journey, there's so many that I could be gifting this product to. And I think that that's wonderful that I would be proud to give a bottle to, because there's so many things in the market that are so very sweet and hurt my teeth, right? Because they're trying to find that sweet spot, I believe, in mimicking wine. And this is just so interesting to me that it is crisp, it is refreshing, it is so bright, it's lovely. And so with that said, Maggie, I'd like to start with you. There are several other no alcohol French sparkling wines available, on the market. What makes French Bloom really stand out?
Sure. So I think there are a few things that truly set French Bloom apart. First is our philosophy. We never set out to make an alcohol-free alternative. We each and every day remind ourselves that we're here to make a great sparkling wine that just happens to be 0.0%. And that may sound a bit like semantics, but it changes absolutely everything. As Rodolphe was saying, if your starting point is replacing alcohol, you will always be chasing what you've removed. So our starting point and our conviction is pleasure, complexity, gastronomy, and emotion. And this has really driven us today to where we are. We've just made the acquisition and we're opening the world's first alcohol-free sparkling wine maison or winery that's fully dedicated to non-alcoholic, because we believe alcohol-free deserves terroir, it deserves craftsmanship, it deserves a home, and we would love to host you, first and foremost, the two of you, but all listeners in the next year to our maison in Limoux. And with that, I think the second thing that really sets us apart is our know-how. As Rodolphe said, I think there's this misconception in our industry that you can just simply take a fine wine and remove the alcohol and have a beautiful alcohol-free fine wine. And as we've learned, it doesn't work that way. So what we do, which really differentiates us from anybody else in our big aha moment, is what about instead of taking wine meant to be wine with alcohol, de-alkalizing it, and then going back and building that, covering that error by adding sugar or artificial aromas. What if we look at it differently? And this was actually inspired by Rodolphe's work in cognac. In cognac, you start with a base wine, an undrinkable base wine, a Uni Blanc. And after distillation, you have cognac. So we also work very much with the art of base wines, undrinkable base wines, because de-alkalization, while we work with a manual method, cold vacuum distillation, we still lose about 60% of the aromas. So we need to start with exaggerated base wines that have texture, flavor, that mouthfeel, always keeping in mind that there will be this de-alkalization. We think the more work you do before, you don't have to go back and cover and kind of rebuild after. So I think our second, really what sets us apart is know-how. And then I'd say maybe the third, and I'd love to hear Rodolphe of also how he sees things, but I think the ambition for the category itself, our ambition is to be a top 10 sparkling wine brand worldwide. And I think the fact that we're non-alcoholic is secondary. We look to those other beautiful sparkling wine maisons there, and we want to transcend our own category. And I think that was the right approach, because first and foremost, it keeps us extremely demanding on everything that we do, whether it's production, R&D, packaging, brand building, but also it's very much who our customers are. We started this conversation by saying that French Bloom customers aren't only pregnant women, the sober community, the religious market. 80% of those consuming French Bloom in the over 60 countries that we're currently present in do drink sparkling wine, but they're just want this art of choice, and they want more options based on the moment, based on how they feel, to go between alcoholic and non-alcoholic.
Yeah, thank you. It's just incredible, because it is it's truly a sparkling wine, right? I mean, it's not, and I agree with you, it shouldn't just be beholden to those who are on their NA journey. I think it's also open to those who are curious about the NA sector as well. This is such a great place for those to start. Rodolphe, can you expand more about the winemaking process of French Bloom? Can you talk about where are the grapes grown? What's the method of production? And I know Maggie touched on that a bit as well, lees aging, et cetera.
I mean, you're right. At the end of the day, a great wine is first and foremost a great terroir in a bottle. That's super important. And I think the big difference between French Bloom and any other alcohol-free wine on the market is provenance. We're bringing provenance into our alcohol-free wine. We believe the greatest wine are all about provenance. And at one point, if you can even speak about a small parcel, you're getting to the best wine in the world. Romanée Conti is like one single parcel, one single terroir. The soil is super important. And as you know, wine is much more than just like beer. I don't have nothing against beer or spirits, but beer or spirits are a little bit more generics. When it comes to wine, it's about the terroir, it's about the seasonality, it could be about the vintage, it could be also about the cepage. So we use Chardonnay, Pinot Noir. The fact that we need wine with more body and more shoulders. As Maggie said, we lose 60% of the aroma of the wine when we're doing our de-alcoholizations. In the past, we actually used to lose 90% of the aroma because we were only doing one de-alcoholizations and much warmer. Now we do three de-alcoholizations, much colder at a low temperature, but we're still losing 60% of the aroma. If I go back also to the first days of French Bloom in 2020, where we were looking for the terroir, when we de-alcoholized all those wine, we realized that actually the wine from the south of France were actually much better to achieve our quest because they are more sun, they have more body, and also because in Languedoc, so we start with Languedoc. Now we bought our vineyards in Limoux, which is kind of the equivalent of the Grand Cru of Languedoc. It's on the high hills, but we first start in Languedoc because at the beginning we thought also we had to be organic. And 40% of the appellations of Languedoc is actually organic when it's less than 5% in Champagne. But on top of that, we need some grapes. There is grapes in Languedoc. There is great Chardonnay, especially with body, with quality, with shoulder, and there is more sun. And so we did our test, and we realized that those Chardonnays, those base wine, when you vinify Chardonnay in a certain way, and this is where it's interesting, because we first create and develop our own know-how, and slowly we include and anchor this know-how into a terroir. That was really step two. And so the more we've been advancing in our quest, the more we've been able to get a very precise idea of what is our terroir. Now we also acquire recently beautiful vineyards in Limoux with 25 hectares, where we actually create our base wine. It's very interesting, this concept of base wine. As Maggie say, we come from Champagne, we come from Cognac, and Champagne and Cognac is also the art of base wine. You need base wine, so we age base wine sometimes for a few years with barrels, sometimes with oak, when we have to really build base wine with enough body, base wine without sulfite also. So base wine age sometimes in new oak barrels without sulfite that create like profile with a lot of oxidations, a little bit like the yellow vin jaune of Jura or those type of like natural wine without sulfite, when we have to play with the yeast base wine to kind of like create those type of profile where we realize that when you have those wine from the south and they are aged with a specific calendar, which is our own, with sometimes we do the harvest, for example, 2 to 3 weeks after everybody in Limoux to get as much expressions. And sometimes we have to really exaggerate those base wine, and this is really unique of French Bloom. This is this know-how that we've been developing in the last 5 years, which is much more than a know-how. Now we have this beautiful terroir. So in Limoux was also the historical place, the birthplace of the first sparkling wine, 100 years before Champagne. So it's an incredible place with a beautiful history and with a terroir, which is very interesting because it's on the high hills at 300 meters. So you have much more acidity. It's a little bit colder than in Languedoc. And, slowly we even going to create our own clos. So clos, which is a parcel surrounded of wall. We're getting to a place where we can speak also of the age of the vine. All the specificities that you can find in wine, we are starting to get precise enough to be able to speak about the terroir. So it's very long.
I think that it's absolutely, fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And so, alcohol really adds the texture and the mouthfeel to the wine. So, when you talk about, the region and the grapes that are grown and the process as well, how are you really able to replicate that taste. I want to talk now about the taste, right? Of like the high quality sparkling wine without adding any alcohol whatsoever.
The question is always to find the good balance between the acidity, the freshness, the textures, the length. So for Le Blanc and Le Rosé, we have a methodology which is a little bit different from the Extra Brut and La Cuvée. So we have 4 SKU who are very complementary. For La Cuvée and the Extra Brut Blanc de Blanc, we work on the base one of like 100% base one, where we do either like very late harvest for La Cuvée or very early harvest for the Extra Brut to get as much acidity as possible. And then we are going to work on those base one intensely, aging in new oak barrels to get as much oxidations, as much body, as much oak, in order after the dealcoholizations to find back this texture, the complexities that you can usually find on the top Blanc de Blanc or great old vintage. This is the type of profile we're looking for Extra Brut Blanc de Blanc and for La Cuvée Vintage Blanc de Blanc. While for Le Rosé and Le Blanc, we're really looking for a very nice alcohol-free sparkling experience of a wine, but with more freshness, more vivacity, more body, and a little bit of fruits, but without adding sugar like we do, for example, in Champagne, without adding sulfides like we do. So it's a very complicated quest. What we do for Le Blanc and Le Rosé is we have those base wine of Chardonnay, and then we add a little bit of must to basically bringing back the fruit and the body from the grape juice that we add on top of the dealcoholized base organic Chardonnay without sulfite. So we're bringing the fruit and the body for Le Blanc like this, and for Le Rosé by adding a little bit of must from Pinot Noir to bring back the body and the fruit. So we're getting the fruit for Le Blanc and Le Rosé and the balance from this technique. And for La Cuvée and the Extra Brut, we're getting the fruit and the body from the use of the barrels who bring naturally the body and the texture.
And I just want to add that during the R&D over the first few years, we decided not to add sulfites to the wines when they were aging in oak, because I was very adamant that I wanted, again, it to be safe for a pregnant woman. And it actually worked in our favor. By not having sulfites, it allowed the wines to oxidate a bit. This oxidative nature actually allows us and gives us a bit of that texture of that mouthfeel that you typically lose.
Yes. Thank you for that very detailed explanation on production. But I'd like to go back and touch upon another important point about Limoux as an appellation, or a source, I should say, for the grapes, because your wine is not appellated. It could be made anywhere in France, which is a really important point. Yet you choose to use one of the best places for producing high-quality sparkling wine, Limoux. Rodolphe talked about the higher elevation and the cooler temperatures which preserve acidity, but also you have this beautiful chalky limestone soil in Limoux that really replicates the terroir, what you find in Champagne. So clearly this was intentional, and a lot of thought went into the quality of French bloom, and that's really admirable. I think for a lot of listeners out there, they may not realize that, but they do make a lot of Crémant de Limoux there. And as Rodolphe pointed out, 100 years before Dom Perignon had his epiphany, they were making sparkling wine in the Limoux region. So really, really interesting point for the quality of this wine. And now I'd like to jump over and talk a little bit about design, Maggie. So Bridget and I both love the bottle and the label design of French Bloom, and I know this was intentional. So tell us a little bit about the idea behind the shape of the bottles and the beautiful yet simplistic labeling.
Well, thank you for that. So it's true that we wanted someone to be able to see French Bloom across the room and immediately understand that it belonged among the world's finest sparkling wines. So as you can see, we leaned into the kind of festive traditional sparkling wine DNA and codes. That starts, of course, with a generous silhouette. For Le Blanc and Le Rosé, we have a transparent bottle. And that was also very much thought through. We feel that the category is still so new, and a large part of our customers, our consumers, do want to know what's in the bottle. because they're still trying to understand what is non-alcoholic sparkling wine. So we chose the transparent bottle there. When you talked about, let's say, the label, it's true. We attempted to have a bit of an understated label. We have this beautiful textured ivory paper. We have our blooming logo. We have a French flag as well in a pretty minimal way, but of course, we're very proud to be French. And in the logo, if you look a little bit closer, especially for Le Blanc and Le Rosé, you'll see that there's proliferated holes which make the bloom, the circle around the logo. And this is an ode to what we remove. It's an ode to the removal of alcohol. Again, everything was intentional, and we very much wanted people to feel, proud and not feel different when choosing alcohol-free. I felt like before that, it just wasn't the same. And Rodolphe mentioned that alcohol-free, non-alcoholic beer has made so much progress in the last 15 years. 10 years ago, it was undrinkable, and it was something that maybe you would leave in your refrigerator and pour in a glass and serve to your guest who wasn't drinking at the time. Today, non-alcoholic beer has not just become a part of all of our tables, but they've managed to create a halo effect. It's cool. It's perfectly not just acceptable, but you're proud to order a non-alcoholic beer, and we want the same for wine. We feel like we're just at the beginning of that trajectory, but we want to keep pushing and be, of course, a part of leading that category.
Of course, yeah. And it truly is amazing. Every time I walk into a supermarket or a Whole Foods here and look at the massive amount of brands in the non-alcoholic beer category, it truly blows my mind. And that they managed to make an IPA that tastes like an IPA with no alcohol, hats off, because it's
That's
truly
the holy grail.
it surely is.
You
So
know, I was in Japan recently. Japan is a really good market for us, and we are distributed by Asahi Beers. I don't know if you know Asahi Beers, but pretty big,
of
large,
course.
one of the biggest in Asia. And I spoke with the CEO of Asahi. Asahi is actually distributing French Bloom in Japan, and the CEO of Asahi was saying by 2030, 50% of his beer will be alcohol-free. I mean, it's not a
50%?
small 50%. So it's not a small things, it's a pretty large, like massive shift in terms of like sales.
Yeah, they're
So
preparing the entire business for it to make up over half in the following years, which is just remarkable.
It truly is. So you've given us most of the highlights of French Bloom, but let's just sum it up again for the audience. You're organic, you're vegan, you're alcohol free, you're zero sulfites. What else? Oh, of course, grapefruit source from Limoux, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir Premium, Champagne grapes. What else am I missing, Maggie?
Okay, well, first thing to note is I'm very happy that we were extremely demanding on ourselves on the naturality, because while our customers aren't all pregnant, what we see, especially in the United States, is that people aren't willing to replace a glass of wine with something that's worse for them. They want that healthful decision to follow through to the end. So, no added sugars, low calorie. But I think a biggest benefit has very little to do with what's inside the bottle. It's really about what the bottle allows people to do. So we talk a lot, and we've been studying the use of French Bloom, the consumption of French Bloom as of late, and we see that people are often talking about long-lasting celebrations. And I think that, for decades, alcohol really defined the beginning and the end of an occasion, of a celebration, and consumers are rewriting those rituals. They still love champagne. They still appreciate great wine. It's not going anywhere. Rodolphe and I are very much fans and consumers of fine wine, but we represent what we think the market's going. We're drinking higher quality wine. We're just drinking a bit less. So it's quality over quantity. There's this general premiumization as well. And interestingly enough, we've seen there was a recent study by Nielsen IQ, for example, that showed that 1 out of 2 consumptions of non-alcoholic on-prem, so 1 out of 2 on-prem orders of non-alc, are mixing between alcoholic and non-alcoholic at the same visit by the same customer during the same occasion.
Hmm.
So again, this isn't about replacing alcohol. It's really just about extending the experience and being able to continue the party. That being said, there was one thing I didn't get a chance to share, and I know you were enjoying the Extra Brut earlier, but our newest expression, the Extra Brut, which is a 100% organic Blanc de Blanc, is not only a wine of tension, precision, beautiful minerality, a great expression of our terroir. You mentioned the clay and limestone, but it's also, of course, zero alcohol and zero sugar. We have 1 calorie in a glass of the Extra Brut. And while that wasn't our intention, it was more about delivering the minerality, freshness, and tension. It is a plus. It is an added benefit. And we see, because we do about 25% of our business on our own e-commerce, on our own website, including in the US, we're able to understand and interact with our customers on a regular basis and gather data. We see the Extra Brut currently being the best seller. So we understand that people appreciate, of course, the profile, but also those benefits.
Yes, indeed. I know that you've received a lot of great press for French Bloom, and I'd like you to just give us some of the highlights of some of the critical acclaim that you've received so far.
Sure. We feel very fortunate to have been recognized by some of the top wine critics and awards worldwide. We're very humbled and very much appreciative, have been selected by the World Sparkling Wine Awards as the world's best alcohol-free sparkling wine for 3 years. Equally so, we've won the last 2 years. We've been voted by USA Today readers as the #1 non-alcoholic wine. That, of course, means both of them, for different reasons, mean very much and allow us to feel that the path we're on is the right one and that we have to continue moving forward. And then, of course, in terms of the press, as you can imagine, it took some time, especially for the wine world. I think that we probably weren't ready with our first iterations in those first years, but we're finally at the level, especially with our prestige collection, with the Extra Brut and the La Cuvée Vintage, to be able to, we went around and kissed the rings, and whether it was the chief wine critic of the New York Times with a very positive review for the Extra Brut, or if it was over in the UK as well. I don't know if I should name names or not, but we recognize that the hard work is starting to pay off.
Yes, indeed. Well, congratulations for that. And congratulations for everything you've achieved in 6 years since conception to reality. And that's pretty amazing timeline. And obviously it's paying off because I understand stocks are selling out, have sold out, or you're restocking, not just here in the United States, but of course in France and elsewhere that you are in
Yeah.
distribution. So that's really, really a testament to all the work and thought and effort and emotion and passion that you both have put into this project. And of course, Constance as well. I don't want to leave her out. And we were really, really happy to get to know you both and hear about French Bloom. And thank you so much for being on Served Up today. We wish you much success with French Bloom in the future.
Yes.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Yeah. I want to wish you just some great health and a lot of peace. Cheers. Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.